What's up, everyone? I'm Billy. This is Raj. We wanted to get on here and talk a little bit of women's wrestling and the business aspects of women's wrestling, especially the growth ability that still remains out there. We are big fans, but also believers that women's wrestling is still super underrepresented, and we're always happy to see any of women moving the business forward and continuing to up that pay, exposure, TV time, all that stuff. So uh, this stuff we talk about in the group chat for years, and we just really thought that women's wrestling deserves a bigger platform, and frankly, some people discussing women's wrestling in a positive light and not critiquing every little thing that comes across. Uh, so to start, the name that you clicked on the link, Mercedes Monè, is a draw, point blank, period, fact, accept it. It's the truth. Uh, Raj has a bunch of facts and data that we're going to share with you that will back up that statement. But if you didn't already believe it, get comfortable with it in your heart because it is the truth. Probably one of the reasons she doesn't get the respect she deserves is there's and that she's earned. There's a lot of wrestling, call it media out there. Um, Guys who've been in the business for a while, but the business has probably passed them by, if we're being honest, right? They were in the business 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago. They're not power brokers today. They have an opinion, sure, and they've been behind the scenes, but they're not behind the scenes today, really, not in a position of power. I'm not going to name names, but a lot of that negativity on is she worth the money? She's overpaid. She's not as good, blah, blah, blah. Uh, Based on sexism, racism, jealousy, young black women making a lot of money, more money than a lot of them made in their career. So it's based on a lot of that. And unfortunately, sexism and racism has long been in behind the scenes in wrestling. And again, we like to have these conversations to kind of, we got to push the product forward because there's some really great parts of wrestling, but there's still a lot of ugly out there too. So, real quick before I kick it to Raj, just think about who are the most powerful men in North American wrestling right now? Triple H, Tony Khan, Shawn Michaels, William Regal, Rocky Romero. These are guys that have actual power and influence and decision making ability in North American wrestling. What do they think of Mercedes? Well, Tony Khan just made her the highest paid woman in wrestling history. That's a fact. Triple H was willing to make her the highest paid woman in wrestling history, also a fact. Shawn Michaels and William Regal have always had glowing things to say about Mercedes. It's well reported that William Regal was basically willing to put his job on the line in belief of Mercedes over a decade ago, back in developmental. He believed in her talent and what she would become so strongly. And just a year ago, Rocky Romero created a title so that he could book Mercedes on shows in North America to drive ticket sales and to drive pay-per-view sales. Um, so guys who are actually in charge of the business now are putting the money where their mouth is in regards to Mercedes. And we think that's a great thing for women's wrestling because as she pushes forward, other women are going to continue to push forward as well. So the boss, blueprint, game changer, CEO. The new one, I think, Star Maker. I love it. She's the greatest of all time, and she's in the industry being treated as such, and I think it's a long time coming. So I think the best place to start, Raj, is Fox. I know you have firsthand knowledge of what the executives over at Fox thought about Mercedes, known as Sasha at the time. And I think that's something that really hasn't made it out there, but it's an important part of the story here.
Yeah, so let me kind of paint the picture for everybody. So back in 2018, 2017, 2019, 2020, 2021, so that's what 4 years. As part of my day job, I manage marketing analytics data for companies through my company. The company that I was representing at the time was one of the three biggest cable providers in the United States, and I'm not going to name their name. But when you do that, you have to sell these TV channels as part of your job because I was in what's called sales and retention. So cable cord cutting coming down, how do we get people to stay engaged? So I had a bird's eye view into pretty much every television network from the big four to Stars to HBO. And I knew somebody at every single one of these networks because it was my job. So I spoke to them on a daily basis. We talked about programming. We talked about what shows sell, what shows don't sell, what segments on TV sell, what do advertisers look for, because it all went hand in hand. So obviously, I built relationships with people at Fox and FS1. And at the time, there was heavy knowledge they were going after WWE because it's cheaper programming than doing live shows. And they can get a core demo every single week on a Friday night that they're not going to get with regular TV
Yep.
shows and reruns. So everybody knew this was kind of coming. So what happened was is as they won the SmackDown contract, people inside that Fox FS1 studio told me at the executive, not executive offices, but at the marketing offices and at the sales offices that you're an analytics guy, and they did a lot of analytics around who do they want on Friday Night SmackDown and who's going to make sure that these individuals pop on your TV screen. So they went through a series of focus groups, analytics, picture analysis, and Roman Reigns and Sasha Banks were the two individuals that they went to WWE and said, okay, we need these two to build our show around because all of our analytics, marketing, data tests said these are the two who have television personalities, personas, like they pop. So when you're flipping a channel and you see this person, you're like, oh, that person looks interesting. I want to stay here and see what this is about. And that's what ended up happening. And then if you go back and now watch Fox, they always drafted Sasha Banks to their show. She was a centerpiece of the show the whole time she was on. She was never not on TV unless she had filming or was injured. She was always in a main kind of story on TV. And the data suggests that they were right because from a per minute viewership basis, from her 2019 to when she left, on Fox, she was the number 2 rated person behind Roman Reigns. Whether it's
Wow.
segments or per minute viewing, she was number 2. And she was only number 2 because Roman got a little bit of benefit when he had the football lead ins. So it really skewed up
The
those
KO match,
numbers.
right?
The KO match for sure, where she was on that show, but by the time her match came on, the viewership already went back to where it normally would go. Whereas he got the 20 minutes of 8 million football fans who just didn't turn the channel on Thanksgiving. So she was right there with Roman Reigns in terms of these two are carrying this product. And so for anybody to think that she wasn't a draw, the people at Fox, who, let's be honest here, when you spend $1 billion for something, I don't care what you're buying, you're going to do your research and make sure you're getting the best for your money. And they built Fox around her and Roman Reigns. Before I get to my actual ratings draw stuff, Pizza Hut commercial.
Yep.
Something that we are not talking about in this wrestling media space is in 2019, 2020, a Super Bowl commercial with Pizza Hut, Joe Buck, Troy Aikman, Jimmy Johnson, Mike Pereira, the Fox crew. Who's the face? Roman Reigns, Sasha Banks. They came in on Fox because the Super Bowl was on Fox. Well, you don't think Fox had a hand in who should go to that Pizza Hut commercial? If it was Bailey, if it was Naomi, if it was Charlotte, if it was Becky, they could have made the call because they have the power. But they said, these are our faces of this show. We're sending them to our A. And again, you're a big football fan. This is not like the F team at Fox. This is the A team,
18,
right?
yeah.
Joe Buck, Troy. This is the A team. And they're eating pizza with Sasha Banks and Roman Reigns, where both Sasha and Roman got their music, they got their separate entrances, and she's interacting with, these commentators who are making $15-20 million a year on Fox's biggest show of the year, which is the Super Bowl. They're sending Sasha Banks, Mercedes Monet, Roman Reigns. So for anybody to think that she isn't the draw that us who have known this for a while isn't, they're
We've
just
known.
wrong.
Yeah, they're facts.
And so let me go through all of these. Now, this is over a 10-year span almost. Okay, so we're going to start in 2016. Charlotte and Sasha main event November 28th in Charlotte. What is it? Last Falls Count Anywhere main event. The third hour was up 10% from the previous week. And it was against the Green Bay Packers and Philadelphia Eagles. The third hour was up 10%. Now, is somebody going to tell me that's not a draw? Because anybody who knows anything about football knows that if the Packers and Eagles are playing, anything else on TV is cooked.
And it did,
and they went up 10%.
Too.
It did. It did over 3 million, but it was the third hour did 10% better than the previous week, and the previous week was Bill Goldberg. So let's not forget about that either.
Yep.
When he first came back. So 2017, Alexa Bliss main events a Raw with Sasha Banks. Now, obviously, us from a Sasha Banks booking standpoint, that's kind of, we black that out. But it did 3.2 million in the third hour. Again, 14% up from the previous Raw. And you can always everybody can make the case, okay, it's Alexa was hot, but again, this is a pattern. So she drew in the third hour. 2019 now, she returns with the blue wig. Unannounced. Nobody announced that she was returning, right? Very few people knew she was coming back in Toronto.
I wish I knew. I would have been at the show.
300,000 people changed their channel when they found out that she is back and she's coming to the ring with Natty. As she's walking to the ring, you had 275 to 300,000 people change their channel because they're like, oh my God, Sasha Banks is coming back. If that's not a draw, again, I don't know what the definition is. In 2019, again, her segments with Becky averaged more viewers by 200,000 than any other women's segments, including the segments with Becky the whole year. So now, if you wanted to make the argument that, well, it's Becky, well, then why didn't she do it with everybody else? She's only doing it with Sasha Banks. So you can't give Becky the credit there. You have to say, oh, okay, it's a combination. All right, so now we're going to get to 2020.
Here's where it gets real good.
Sorry.
We know that.
In 2020, Bayley and Sasha had the best quarter hours of anyone continuously if you just look at how much they were presented on TV. The breakup of their feud, when Bayley turned on her, it went from 2.02 million to 2.32 million for the duration. So that's 300,000 viewers that picked up because of the breakup. Sasha versus Bayley on SmackDown November 6th had the highest match or segment since the pandemic started, and it peaked at 2.6 million viewers. Again, in my notes, it says, why were they the Pizza Hut commercial? So I don't want to repeat myself. In 2021, they built Reigns and Sasha as like the two faces again.
Yep.
And even in 2022, when she was in a tag team with Naomi versus Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley on SmackDown, her tag match gained 280,000 viewers. So I have given you from 2016 to 2022, 6 years of data where she has proven that she is a draw because the people at Fox from 2019 knew this already and they made sure to showcase her. But it's not just WWE because everybody can say, well, okay, WWE is a machine. Everybody can draw on
Yep.
it. Great. Let's go to New Japan. Wrestle Kingdom 18 had their most viewers and new subscriptions with the show that Mercedes made her debut on and was the 11th most searched thing on Google the whole day. So now, if
Gigantic.
anybody knows anything about
Huge.
Google, anything knows about Google searches, you're an analyst. I can tell you, you're smarter at this than I am. If you get into the top 20 of a Google search, that is huge. That is machine like stuff. But she did it in New Japan, not
Not a
WWE, not
WWE.
even
Yep.
a New Japan, where you have to wake up at midnight or 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. to even watch this thing. And she was the 11th most searched, which that's phenomenal.
I think she was on at 1:30 or 2 o'clock Central Time. And again, I think the crazy thing, it's like the blue hair. Well, not even like the blue hair. This was based on a rumor. We didn't know for sure she was going to be there. She wasn't announced. You just reading the tea leaves, but people put money up just on a rumor.
So now she announces that she's going to be at the Battle of the Valley against Kyrie. In 3 days after her appearance, the ticket prices went up by 20%, and it was a sold out show. And even those journalists that you mentioned at the beginning acknowledged that one time that she drew the house for San Jose. Now we go to AEW. Okay. This is where I understand there's a little bit of, oh, is she worth the money? But we have to start with AEW as a product when she went to AEW. It was as
Yep.
cold as it's ever been. Now, her first episode, she averaged 967,000 for her debut in Boston, which was 100,000 more than any other opening average for 2024. So even in a very cold product, she gained more viewers than
And sold
everybody
out
else.
and
Yeah,
drew a huge gate on a rumor again.
and she has gained 100,000 per. She's gained 100,000 on two separate appearances, and she has combined all her segments have gained over 300,000 if you total them up in comparison to everybody else who isn't even drawing or gaining to any level. A lot of those segments are losing from the opening of the Big Bang Theory, and she is actually gaining viewers. And yes, gaining 20,000 doesn't seem as impressive when she was in WWE gaining 200,000. But right now, if you look at both companies, one company is as hot as it's ever been. And we're talking about a company that's had some very hot times. Against the company, let's be honest, is probably the coldest it's ever been because it's
Or
not even
was.
outdrawing. Yeah, it's not even outdrawing NXT right now. So
Yep.
it's she is a draw. She is a legitimate draw. She sells tickets. She maybe doesn't move the merchandise, if we're being totally honest, that some of her contemporaries move, the Rhea Ripleys, the Liv Morgans at this present moment. But she in the past has done that. She has sold a lot of merchandise. 2016, she was right up there at the top with a lot of the males. That was a Cena, Reigns, Ambrose, Rollins, Jericho world. So that's impressive because the roster was loaded in
Pretty
2016.
stacked.
So
Yeah.
yeah, like I guess for me and for you and for everybody who we hope listens to this podcast, I don't know what else she has to do to prove that she is a draw. Like it's like we're discrediting her 10 years of proving this, but the data says she is it. And the star maker part is another piece of this puzzle where if you get a match with her, it's like the Willy Wonka golden ticket. You become an instant star. Becky Lynch, NXT, Bailey, Brooklyn. To a lesser degree, Charlotte. I mean, Charlotte will be the first in her book to say the Sasha feud elevated both of them. Okay, Naomi as a team, Bianca Belair, lesser degree Alexa Bliss. And obviously we see what she's done for Stephanie McCoy and Willow
Dude,
Nightingale, but Stephanie McCoy for sure.
yeah, I think it just, at the very minimum, and it's not about giving her credit for some of what these other great women have accomplished. I think it's just giving Mercedes credit for being such a giving performer. A lot of
Yeah.
time, I mean, just read any book about wrestling. The people at the top aren't always reaching down and pulling you up there with them. Her match with Stephanie at Forbidden Door was a really, really good match. You're having a match with someone outside the company. Uh, Mercedes absolutely could have had 70% of the offense in that match. No one would have blinked. No one would have, no one would have said that she, wasn't willing to make Stephanie look good, because that's what happens a lot of the time is the champion kind of gets to call the shots, but she goes into most of her matches, all of her matches, trying to get the herself over, her opponent over, and make sure that the match gets over too, which is why the quality of her stuff is so high. I want to go back to something you said. What else does she have to do to prove that she's a draw? I'm gonna answer that with this. It's a reason why this conversation is important. Why we talked about having this on a podcast. Why is the bar so much higher for her? Why does she have to prove she's worth the money? She's already proven it, but men sign big deals all the time in wrestling. I'm not going to name names and be negative, but the WWE has re-signed 4 or 5 or 6 men over the last 6 months that are in main event, middle card title programs. I don't ever see an article or hear a word about whether they're worth the couple $1 million that they got, whether they're worth 3 million a year or whatever it is. People aren't pocket watching them, and the data would tell you that they don't bring as much to the table uniquely as Mercedes does. I think it's not just that she brings viewers, but she brings demo viewers, a unique set of viewers that
Mhm.
they're not getting otherwise. Certainly that AEW is not getting otherwise. That's why she's valuable to them. But we've either got to stop holding the women to this insane standard now that they've proven what they can achieve and that they're equal to the men, or we've got to start calling a spade on everyone and having these conversations about the men too, because you got a lot of men making 7 figures that are not even on the show, and when they are, nothing happens for the business. Um, so I think it's really about holding women, being fair with what we're asking of these women, and they absolutely bring new viewers, not just Mercedes, to the product that wouldn't be there otherwise.
You brought up a great point about pocket watching, about the double standard. And again, I never understood in media why we are so anti the performers, the laborers getting money, whether it's in the NBA, the NFL, the next quarterback who signs. Do people understand how much money these owners make? And as much as the NFL and NBA, it's like a 50-50 revenue split of football related or basketball related revenue to salaries. Wrestling is one of the most underpaid industries for the labor when you give in how much wrestling brings in at the gate. WWE just signed 500 million a year Netflix. They're going to do 300 million on USA, whatever the number is um for CW. Like they're doing billion plus, right? 1.5 billion. They don't spend 750 million dollars a year on salaries.
Nope.
They spend 200 million, 250 million. So they're giving their performers peanuts compared to what these other entertainment and sports
Yep.
leagues and movie studios give their performers. So if I'm, like we're going to change narratives on this podcast and be positive, I want every single wrestler to make as much money as they can make.
100%.
I don't care
Yep.
if it's the jobber, quote unquote, on NXT. If they're making 500 grand, bravo, because they put their bodies on the line. The travel schedule can be brutal. The travel itself can be brutal unless you're flying private or you have car service. You got to book hotels. It's a tough grind. And when I was in my reporting days and I was in a magazine business, I have interviewed many, many wrestlers. And yes, it's gotten substantially better now in terms of how they do travel, how they do it compared to what it used to be. But let me tell you something. These guys, and I interviewed all timers, Edge, Christian, Flair, Booker T, Guerrero, not Guerrero, Malenko, Benoit. You could see it on their bodies. Like these are individuals who look beat down because they're in Hondas driving town to town and they're 6'5". And they're like, oh, how do I do this? And we should all, as wrestling fans, want them to make as much money as they can make,
Yep.
male or female. And then we should also want the women who do draw women. I didn't say Mercedes, I'm saying women. Rhea, Liv, Mercedes, Bianca, all of them, to make as much money as the men, because
100%.
women itself in other sports, other than maybe tennis or gymnastics, are mispaid in comparison to their male counterparts. Like, Serena Williams, when she was at her peak of her powers, she's a bigger star than any male on the court, right? There was no
Yep.
male tennis player who's a bigger star than Serena, but it took Venus to fight for pay equity when Serena and Kornikova and all of the women were drawing more money than the men, but men were just making more. And I think in wrestling, we need to get to that stage where we just say, hey, Mercedes, you're the highest paid now. Rhea, you're coming up. Becky, you're coming up. We should want them to make millions because they deserve it. And they put the work in and they produce the revenue that generates it. And we gotta just be a little bit more smart about that. Like pocket watching is a really good term. And I don't know why we do it, especially when it comes to women and African American women.
100%.
Because it's like we got into think pieces about Mercedes' salary, but
Right.
would we have gotten to think pieces if it was Rhea Ripley? Maybe like it would just be, oh, Rhea's a star, she deserves it. And she does. But like Mercedes doesn't deserve it. Like she hasn't earned the right to be the highest paid women's wrestler for a period of time. Why not?
Yeah. Well,
It's the
part of
market.
that's the tribalism too, right? Because she did jump over to AEW, but I'm going to make the argument that that's what makes her such a groundbreaker. If she negotiates tough with WWE, but ultimately Triple H makes her the highest paid woman ever, but she stays with WWE, salaries across the board don't rise because it's like a bluff, a bluff, a bluff. But ultimately, AEW hasn't gotten a big fish. Mercedes going to AEW has made, and again, these are things that happen in a free market. I'm not crediting solely Mercedes with this, but Natty's contract is bigger because Mercedes went to AEW because the fear of Natty going to AEW is much more real now. And she could negotiate, and I bet her, I hope her agents did. I could realistically go over here. You need to pay me what I'm worth. Stephanie, I mean, WWE went at her as aggressively as we've seen them go at anyone. She was on the show last night. I mean, so
She
they
wrestled.
absolutely, I know, they absolutely went after her with big dollars. And I hope Rhea absolutely smashes Mercedes' uh, highest paid number. I think Becky might, depending on
Let's
what she
stick to
wants to.
the Stephanie topic.
Okay,
Let's stick
yeah,
to the Stephanie topic because Stephanie's a good segue. So I was thinking about this. I know I'm a huge Stephanie McCourt fan. You became,
she's great,
like I did, a huge
fantastic.
fan when we watched her against Mercedes the first time last year.
Yep.
So when the whole news broke that, oh, people are watching this match with Mercedes, and if the match goes as everybody expected it to go, where it's going to be this classic, it's going to be great, she's going to have offers from everybody. Stephanie, because she was essentially a free agent, but
Yep.
CMLL always allows their talent to move. Okay. So I went back after the first Mercedes match and I said, okay, let me watch some Stephanie Vacour because this is a phenomenal woman performer. And she's had matches with with Julia. She had matches with Willow. She's had matches with a lot of great women, right?
Izumi, right?
Izumi. And then she comes back to the Mercedes match to kind of, I guess, finish the story of the New Japan Strong title being the Mercedes title from the beginning. And I say, okay, well, if she was like, look, WWE, whether they are going to admit this or not, and they never will, they weren't watching those matches with Gilia and with Izumi. They weren't watching those matches.
No.
But Mercedes is one of theirs. No matter what anybody wants to say, she's a WWE homegrown kind of talent. So her style in the ring
They know where
suits
her
what
bar's at.
Michaels and Triple H does. And all of a sudden, the reports leak. Oh, they're going to be paying attention to this match with Mercedes. They're going to be watching. And then the reports actually come out that it was the Mercedes match that got WWE saying, okay, no, we got to go get her. We got to go pay top dollar and do things that are so out of character for WWE. Let's see what WWE did in 5 days. They aggressively pursue her. Reportedly, they fly her, they make her miss a show in CMLL, fly her to Toronto to kind of negotiate and get this done. And then they send her back. She doesn't, I guess whatever happens, she doesn't lose. But then they sign her, and they don't wait to do vignettes on TV. She's coming. Shawn Michaels
Tweets it
yeah,
out.
we signed her. Yeah, she's ours. We signed her. Oh, by the way, not only did we sign her, she's going to be in Mexico City on Saturday night, and she's going to wrestle. And we're going to present her. We're going to present her like this huge star. She's going to come out. She's going to get a promo. She's going to beat, our half of our tag team champions. She's going to beat clean. And then she's going to say, this is my dream, and I've always wanted to be here, and I sold popcorn to see Rey Mysterio. But my point here is the Mercedes exposure did do this for her, whether we want to give her the credit or not. Do I think Stephanie McCourt should have been signed after last year's match with Mercedes? Yes, I think Tony Khan at that moment should have got on his phone and said, Stephanie, come on over. To me, she was good enough in that match. She was great in that match where she deserved a top dollar, high profile spot from one of the two big North American companies. But the crowd, the night with the injury, whatever, it didn't happen. So my point is, if you get in the ring with Mercedes, because of her selfless nature that you so eloquently said, she can go out there with how she performs and make the other person who's already great look just a little bit better. But to the people who sign the checks in the big company, they know Mercedes is us. Like when she wrestles in AEW, she's an AEW talent, but that's us. That is us grooming her to become what she is. And if she can work with Mercedes, she can come here and work with Rhea. She can come here and work with Bianca. She can come here and work with Becky.
Like a skeleton key. Like it translates, and they know how good Mercedes is, and they see Stephanie hang with Mercedes twice. Maybe they didn't watch that first match, as closely, but the second match they certainly did. I love Stephanie. I think she's going to do great. Her chemistry with Mercedes and just her physicality alone reminds me kind of Asuka. Just a really crisp physicality about her. So I think it's going to translate to WWE very, very well. Like Asuka had no issues whatsoever. And she's crisp, man. She's stiff. And I think it's going to elevate the product to have her involved. So
they're presenting her, man, like she's a big deal. Like I watched the whole thing in Mexico City, and I'm like, wow, have they ever presented a woman other than maybe Jade Cargill recently as from the day she walks in the door? And I guess they're going to do this with Julia. The day she walks in, we're going to present her as an A+ star from day one. I can think of Jade. I could think now Stephanie. I know they're going to do it, Julia. They did it with Asuka. They did kind of do it with Sasha Banks. If you go back and think about the 2015 to 2016 Sasha Banks,
9 years
She
ago
came
yesterday
in,
debuted.
she came in, NXT Women's Champ, did not lose a match on the main roster
Yep.
until 2016 draft, where she got pinned in a handicap match by Charlotte. The next week she won the title. So it was like, or no, she lost, then pinned her at the tag match where Bailey was the guest, the surprise, and then beat her the Monday. Sasha went a whole year without losing on the main roster, even though she lost in NXT twice during that time, the Bailey and then the Bailey rematch. So, I mean, she was booked pretty strong when she came in the door. Now, she technically
100%.
lost Mania 32 because she didn't win the title, but she never got pinned. So they rarely do what they're doing with Stephanie. And again, Stephanie should have been signed already. But the way WWE booked this full court press and they made her miss a show almost and presented her like this big, like they're presenting her walking to the arena by herself to an audience that, let's be honest, until probably 2 weeks ago, didn't know who she was. Like, that's the thing that it's not frustrating, but online it's like, oh, she was always a star. I'm like, okay, so how many WWE fans went and watched her New Japan work? Well, if you look at
They
the
didn't.
numbers, it's not going to be that many, right? It's a small
Right.
percentage, but they watched when she fought Mercedes, whether they watched it, they ordered the pay per view or they saw the clips or they saw the YouTube X. They're like, "Ooh, this woman's great." And then WWE's like, "Well, you know what? Our fans already want her. We're going to go put the full court press." And I think elevating talent is a lost art in wrestling, and it doesn't get enough credit when somebody can do it very well. I think Mercedes is as good as we've ever seen in doing that.
Win
I
or
mean, she
lose.
deserves
Yeah.
that. Yeah, yeah, she's great. And so I'm excited to see what they do with Stephanie. I feel like Stephanie is a little bit above, like the NXT women are all coming and they're all, there are a lot
I
of
would have went
phenomenal. Yeah.
straight to main roster with her. I get it. This Liv and Rhea feud is about as hot as anything that they've had. Absolutely going to suck up all the oxygen on Raw, and I think where they steered the SmackDown Women's division this last Friday was really good. Right, you've got
Mm-hmm.
Bailey fleshing out the story with Naya, some of their past history. Got Tiffany in there with the Money in the Bank contract now. Uh, and they're layering in some of the other women, Chelsea, and the match Naya and Michin uh, was really really good. I thought it was a great match, and
Is that the best match you've seen from Mia Yim on the main roster?
100%. But I don't want to say it like she's not been capable of it this whole time. She's always been great in the ring. She was in the Mae Young Classic, right? I remember a
Mm-hmm.
couple of them matches. I think she's had some really great matches in NXT. She's always been very good. That's the most they've let her breathe in a match. You know what I mean? I mean, they let her they let her be this valiant baby face under Naya, who was fantastic as well. She's great in that role. Um, sh and Yeah, it was absolutely the best match from
two
Mia Yim.
two women, two women. I want to give Triple H a lot of credit for bringing back. Nia Jax is one. I think she's been absolutely fantastic since she's returned in the dominant heel. You
Yep.
can't beat me, I can kill you role. Like I think she's done phenomenal work. I think it's the best work of her career. She seems to have a confidence to her that she didn't have the first time. That could be booking, that could be indecisions that the company was making, but her promos are to the point, and the way she wrestles is so perfect for her. Where you give her the best, but she pretty much destroys you at the end. And Chelsea Green is the other person. Those are the two women that Triple H has brought back that I was like, wow, these are
Ch
really good signings.
Chelsea is so extremely entertaining. Um, you can put her in a backstage segment, in ring. She could be, tag partners wrestling. She's on the sidelines, just being entertaining as all hell. And I think most WWE fans probably don't know. She obviously took a mega bump last weekend. She's pretty good in the ring. I mean, she had a Japan tour. She's had to hang. That's not been her role with her character currently in WWE. And I know she had a couple of the injuries on her first run, but she can absolutely hang. Um, so I'm excited to kind of see, she makes the most out of that comedy bit. But I think something that will never change about the WWE. If you're just entertaining on TV, you're going to be on TV at the minimum, right? Now, are you going to be in the championship matches? Maybe not, but you're going to be on TV all the time. And I think she had 3 or 4 segments this week, which that's progress for the women for sure. We're going to celebrate them being on TV anytime.
I think Chelsea's been phenomenal. I think what they're doing with Michin, Mia Yim is great. Nia is great. Obviously, Tiffany is coming. I mean, I don't know if you saw the clip of the Mexico show, but Bailey Bianca was the one-on-one, which was interesting. It's like Bailey versus Bianca for the title in Mexico City. Are they
Hmm.
teasing a Bianca heel turn at some point, or are they teasing a Bailey one? But they had the match. Tiffany comes out to cash. The crowd went bonkers for Tiffany in Mexico City. They went, but this is a cash in, right? Everybody goes crazy for a cash in.
Yeah.
She was trying to cash. Bianca prevented the cash in, and Bailey rolled Bianca up, pinned her 1, 2, 3 with the schoolgirl, and because Bianca helped Bailey, thwarted the cash in, she lost the match, which is how the match ended. I was shocked that they're already incorporating Tiffany into house shows for the cash in, which I think is great because could you
Yeah.
imagine if a cash in happened on a house show? You'd be like, oh, I got to go to the house shows. Wow, we can get cash ins. But the fact that Bianca is Bailey's opponent on the house shows when you could have done Piper Niven, you could have done Chelsea Green, you could have
Yeah.
done anybody is interesting because are they preparing for a Bianca Bailey feud down the road where Bianca is now the heel going after the title? Is that where this is headed, or is it Bianca and Bailey are just going to do a feud as rivals without the belt? Because by then Tiffany has the belt and Nia is chasing her. It's interesting. I was surprised because they don't really beat Bianca on house shows.
Yeah.
They don't
No,
beat. They don't even beat. Actually, let me clarify. They don't really beat Bianca. Period.
no. I was gonna
So
ask, was it count out, DQ? Someone
no,
must have
she pinned
interfered.
her.
Um,
Yeah, she pinned her.
that's no, you know what? On fire lately, really just making a lot of good
Mm-hmm.
decisions. Um, I think we started that with you physically and where she's at in her career, Stephanie would be, a top 3 woman in ring in the main roster right now. So you could easily put her there. But I think storyline wise, I get it because if they want her to come in and just be a destroyer, you'd have to upend um, Liv and Rhea or Bailey, Nia, Tiffany, and I think Triple H obviously has plans on both brands, so I get that piece. But I'd love to see her
Well,
on main roster sooner rather than later.
two things. One, we know a mid card women's title is rumored to be coming, whether it's Intercontinental, US, whatever the term is on both shows. Number two, couldn't you make her the female Braun Breaker? Like, couldn't you have Stephanie come out and destroy a lot of the mid card women with these feuds, like what Braun? I mean, he lost to Sammy, but Ilya, like he's beating everybody, and she's beating everybody to build her up. So when the Rhea Liv or the Bailey Nia, whatever, whoever ends up
Could
being the winner of those feuds, now you have a ready-made I'm next in line, kind of like Gunther. Like, couldn't you make her put her in
but
that
Gunther,
vein?
if they have a mid card title, a Gunther run is exactly perfect for her. I think. I don't know if that works on Raw, having her just destroy everyone, because I think the Liv Rhea thing has possibly even WrestleMania legs. It certainly has 6 months of legs. That could be interesting though on SD because I don't think they'll run the Nia Bailey program. No matter who wins, they're not going to run it that much further past SummerSlam. Tiffany, who knows when she'll cash in, but um, if Stephanie came on to SmackDown and just started destroying everyone and you have Bailey beat Nia, does that turn into a I just thought of it in my mind. You could have her come out and destroy Bailey and have Tiffany easy cash in there, and it's you've made her this crazy heavy. Um, and then her and Bailey could. There's a million ways you could go. So I don't think she'll be in NXT for a long time. Um, but I'm just happy to see that they're, again, uh, strapping the rocket to a woman, and NXT already has the best women's exposure. And with signing Julia, Stephanie, some of the things that they're doing, Kalani Jordan's been really, really great. Um,
We haven't talked
uh,
about Roxanne yet.
Roxanne is probably one of my top three favorites right now. So yeah, NXT is like, but uh, NXT is the one of the best rosters for women's wrestling, but it is a little bit more on the developmental side. Not necessarily Roxanne, certainly, but Stephanie for where she's at. So I don't know that they'll figure it out. I don't know that she'll be down there that long, but I'm just happy to see her get paid, living her dream, and again, we're always going to root for that in women's wrestling. And the Natty news, I mean, hopefully she got
Yeah,
hooked up today. I think she's super valuable, obviously behind the scenes too. Um, with as many young, talented women as they have down at the PC, I think keeping her around. Um, is a gigantic win for them, and it would have been
I,
a. I'm not going to undersell it. It would have been a gigantic win for AEW to get her over to the roster.
I think if we're being totally objective about this week, not getting either Stephanie or Natty for
It's
AEW
tough.
is a big loss.
It's
It's a
tough.
big. They're gonna have to really evaluate like what they did in their process not to get them, because we know Tony has the money and we know Tony will spend the money. That's not the issue. But what is it that's okay? So I understand the Stephanie one for sure. Her dream is WWE, Rey Mysterio, popcorn. There's the controversy that we don't need to get into about, the
No,
ex-husband, boyfriend, right? We don't need that.
no,
So she might have just felt
none of our
comfortable, like
business.
I want this new thing. I've never done it. I tried out for them in 2018. I didn't make it. They want me. I have them where I need them. Okay. Natty's interesting because she's accomplished so much in WWE. She's done a lot she's been a reality TV star. She came in with Beth Phoenix. She wrestled, Charlotte. She put Charlotte on the map. She's done everything. So I always thought about somebody like her. It's like that wrestling itch to meet, to face different people, like the Edge itch or the Daniel Bryan itch or the Mercedes Monet itch. And I was surprised that she re-signed with WWE. I thought if anybody jumps of the free agents, it would be her, because there's just so much more new, fresh stuff for her to do in AEW. The travel schedule is better. But then I think, well, her husband is a high end producer at
Yeah,
WWE, and they're not going to let him go because he's probably, if not the best that the business has, he's at the top. She's not going to want to, travel separate and do all that stuff. So I think there's that's a component. But again, as a fan of women's wrestling, I want it to be a little bit more even, where maybe the younger
yeah,
talent is WWE, but then the veterans who have a lot to offer can go to AEW and elevate that division with a Mercedes centerpiece, Willow, Britt, all of them. I would have
yeah.
loved to see Natty in AEW. That's all. It would have been
It's not
preference.
it. I don't think AEW's women's roster is lacking by any means. They've got a lot of
Mm-mm.
great women over there, but I think Natty made the best decision for her. Again, got paid. We're happy about it. So it's not a conversation
Mm-hmm.
necessarily about Natty if she should have made a different decision. I think dollar for dollar, she would have been worth more to AEW than she would to WWE on
Yeah.
TV. The behind the scenes stuff
Mm-hmm.
with TJ, and she's priceless. But if you're Tony, she would have been a big get just from a standpoint of, again, continuing to add kind of prestige to your roster. Um, the behind the scenes locker room stuff she could have done with a lot of the younger women over there. And I think that there was room for her to have kind of a badass run in AEW, that maybe she'll get on the mid card title when it comes out in WWE. But this is nothing against Natty. You line up the roster that they have. How long's Bianca going to go without a belt, right? Naomi just re-signed and she had a couple matches with Bailey, but she hasn't really sniffed the title scene. Um, Certainly not like what she was doing, crushing it in TNA as a dominant champion. If Becky comes back, they'll have some booking stuff to do with her. Rhea and Liv
Charlotte.
obviously occupying the top. Charlotte,
We
Asuka.
haven't even talked about Charlotte,
Actually, no,
Asuka.
Charlotte. Time for it on this. I'm more excited to see Charlotte wrestle the next time she's back than I'm hated seeing her get injured, but I actually think the time is right for a monster Charlotte Flair babyface run that's going to fully work because I think everyone's going to have missed her so much,
Yeah,
having
that's
her
a good
out
point.
there. So back to Natty, it's just you'd love to re-sign a free agent and then give them a run, and I just maybe there's not as much oxygen over there. But hopefully they have a plan. She did some good stuff on NXT over the last year, but I just don't think that that's where her um spot is. And so where do you fit her in onto Raw or SmackDown?
The Charlotte Flair one is interesting because, to your point, she's never had a story. She's had a lot of titles. She's won everything, but she's never had a story, like a golden role model story, the man, rise story, the Bianca Belair
She's never been the
story.
A side. She was the B side on a
Yeah.
little bit, the B side on Charlotte's or on Becky beginning of that man run, right? The best friend breakup deal. But go ahead.
So it's interesting, right? You have Charlotte coming back. If the plans that were reported were correct, it was Charlotte versus Bianca, Becky versus Rhea. Rhea beats Becky, Bianca beats Charlotte, and now you're setting up the two new dominant women who previously beat the two dominant women to now see who is the dominant woman,
Right.
Bianca or Rhea. Charlotte gets injured, so we never get Bianca and Charlotte. So, but now, can you really make the argument that Charlotte shouldn't be the one who gets the momentum, gets the win, gets the title to eventually probably drop it to one of those two? But she's already dropped it to Rhea, so it would have to be Bianca. But like, I feel like you're right. Like, I'm more invested in a Charlotte Flair story right now than I am in what is going on with Bianca story wise, because I'm not necessarily as invested as others maybe in their rechase of tag titles. Like, I'm not that invested in that story, but Charlotte coming back and having to grind and build her way back up from an injury, a threatening injury, is a good story to me. Like, that's a
Yeah.
great story. And I feel like, oh, for the first time, Charlotte has an underdog character where, people can attack her leg and people could call her old and people could say she's washed and it's legitimate in the storyline.
How many times has she been gone a little bit? She comes back, and the joke is she wins the title on the first or second or third show back.
Yeah.
Always. It's happened like I think it's happened 5 times, and even happened the one time they couldn't fit her in to the main title. She won the tag title on her first or second show back, right? On a random thrown together deal with was it Asuka?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
Asuka, and then she did it with Rousey. No, it was Rousey. Remember?
Oh
Rousey
yeah.
won the title or defended her title and then said, I'll challenge whoever. They play Charlotte's music. She comes back and beats her quickly
Yeah.
with like a roll up or a big foot.
Well,
And
that one
again,
was we love that, but
yeah, everybody loved it. But Charlotte herself in her book and in interviews has talked about how she even hates the multiple titles being her story, because it doesn't do anything for her. It's like she wins, she loses, she wins, she loses, she wins, she
Yeah.
loses. And it doesn't actually make anybody love her or hate her. It just makes them annoyed. And I think if they play their cards right, they should allow her story to develop where she gains everything like this and then gets to Mania. And I think I could make the case she should win a title. Now,
Yeah.
hopefully by then there are mid card titles and she wins one of those because she has never done that. And that could be like a resume bullet point. But I just
I mean,
think like, yeah,
depending on how they do it, I think, I mean, the story is right there that she comes back, but this time is different. And instead of jumping into the title scene, the roster is more stacked than it's ever been. Back of the line, bitch, as we've heard the line said many times by all of the horsewomen, right? But no, have to work her way up from the very bottom or the middle, because you have a Bianca and a Jade and a Naomi and a Bailey and a Nia and a Tiffany. And then on the other side, not quite as thick at the top, right? But you've got Damage Control over there. You've got Rhea and Liv. But just have her come back and have someone say to her, like, hey, you're not just going to waltz in and fight for the title, You might be over the hill. We don't even know if you can do it anymore, and have that underdog piece. I think could be
you
really,
brought
really
up
good.
you brought up Io Sky. So doing this for the folks who listen to this, there's an Io Sky had a match at, I think it's Marigold last night with Utami. And in my humble opinion, it's as good as any other women's match that's happened this year. And I'm not
Yeah.
ranking one over the other, but it was a phenomenal 23-minute match. And for those who are fans of Io Sky in the WWE, the glimpse you got in that match was the 2016, 2017 Io Sky, who many at the time had as the best women's wrestler in the world, including, by the way, myself. And she gave you the Japan crisp, hard hitting, she's
Yeah.
really doing a different level of move set. So I highly recommend anybody out there, if you can find it on, somebody posted it on X, on Twitter, it's on YouTube, watch that match. And then in the same card, there's a Saray who was in NXT for 3 years match versus Julia, who's coming to NXT. That was a phenomenal match just from the physicality and how they really went at each other. But I would tell everybody, go out of your way to watch those two women's wrestling matches. And, this Wednesday, you're going to get Nyla Rose against Mercedes Monet with I guess it's the open challenge. And everybody knows, if you watch Mercedes' career, she's phenomenal in the David versus
Dave,
Goliath type matches. The Nia Jax match from Boston was a masterclass in that
it
storytelling.
absolutely is. It's one of her best match types. The interesting thing though is I'm interested to see how she's going to do that. Well, she's committed to this heel role. You can absolutely tell
Yeah.
from last week. So the David versus Goliath, even when she's done it as a heel, it was always part of turning her, right? The Nia Shayna match, her just getting butchered by Shayna and Nia, you know, was part of the turn, and then had everything ready to go for Bailey to turn on her because she just took a beating. So it'll be interesting to see how they lay the Nyla match out, but I'm very
Body
excited to
part,
see it.
maybe she goes
Yeah,
after
maybe.
the body part that's injured and kind of wears her down. But like, here's going to be the interesting thing: can Mercedes get her up for the move?
I We'll see. She's tough,
I
man.
mean,
She got
that's
Willow up and walked halfway across the damn ring, so she's
yeah,
strong.
she
If she
is
doesn't do it,
sneaky strong.
I'm gonna say it's because she's going to use the I don't know what we call it anymore, the crossface, the old bank statement there. Maybe she does that to
Money
be more
maker
vicious.
into the bank statement. I think she
Yeah,
has to win this match with the bank statement. I don't see
yeah,
her doing the. Maybe she gets the money maker and then flips it like she did against Stephanie. But again, this is why we love women's wrestling, but we're very high on Mercedes because her matches always have you wondering how she's gonna pull it off. Like,
New
is the
wrinkles all the
story gonna
time.
be? Yeah. So I think that's exciting. I don't know if anybody who listens to this podcast was growing up a Beverly Hills 90210 fan, but I want to say, very sad news. Shannon Doherty passed away this
I
morning.
didn't know that. I did not know that.
Yeah,
That is
she
sad.
was she was 53, and for anybody of a generation like myself, that 90210 Melrose Place kind of double header was
Must
appointment
see
viewing
TV.
TV.
Yeah.
It was, yeah. So Shannon Doherty, an all-time TV villain character, because she was one of the all-time great female antagonist characters. Sad news there. I know she did a lot of stuff on Charmed as well. So yeah, like that was sad. I just saw it.
It's crazy. And Richard Simmons yesterday too.
And Dr. Ruth.
Dr. Ruth. Yep.
Yeah.
Um,
So you have that. Yeah.
hey, so we started with Mercedes is a draw. I think we made that point pretty clearly. And anyone who's still listening at this point must love women's wrestling because we went on a bunch of different topics after that. But
Hmm.
I think this is fun to do. And again, we're always going to try to strive to keep it positive. Sometimes you talk about things and, you know, we're not going to begrudge any performer getting paid. We want more money and revenue for all these wrestlers. But to drag that boulder forward, you have to have groundbreakers like Mercedes willing to
Hmm.
take risks, willing to step out on the ledge and kind of call some bluffs and put themselves out there even further. And it raises the game for everyone else to come in behind them. This is a real dated reference, but it's like, Kurt Flood.
Hmm.
A lot of people don't necessarily know, but free agency in baseball exists because of Kurt Flood. So I
And
won't
it,
tell
and it
that
exists
story,
in
but
basketball because of Oscar Robertson
yep.
and high school players being able to play because of, is it not Moses Malone? It was
Haywood.
Spencer Haywood. Thank you. So
Yeah.
Spencer Haywood. But
So
I want like you said, I want all these professional wrestlers to make, if somebody tells me tomorrow, Roman Reigns makes 30 million a year, I'm like, bravo, he should make 32. Like,
great. Yeah.
we have to stop. And I never understood this, and this is more of a sports diatribe. Why fans, you and I are fans, side with the
The
corporate,
owner.
the
Yeah.
owner? We're like, why, as employees of companies, why do we side with the billionaire owners and not the millionaire employees? Like, they're making the billions. The employees who bring in the ticket sales are making a fraction, but we side with the owners in every single venture, and we say the performer is overpaid. Why?
Yep.
It doesn't make any sense. Like, if I had my druthers, it would be the other way, where the players are getting 80% of the revenue, and the owners are taking in 20% as kind of their walk away margin. But it's like we go the other way. I don't get it.
The
Never got it.
the argument is always, oh, the owners are the ones taking the risk. There's no risk if you own a team in the NFL, if you own a
There,
team in the NBA. The risk there's risk if you run the franchise poorly, sure, but no, I think wrestling is far behind those institutions as far as paying their employees what they're worth. And you bring up Oscar Robertson, Kurt Flood, all that is free agency exists and 50-50 revenue splits exist because of guys like that. And I just want Mercedes to get credit for having the guts to go do this in AEW, follow her dreams for some fresh matches. I'm not, she's getting a ton out of it herself. It's not,
mhm.
but there's courage there. There's absolutely courage there to leave the place you knew for the new place and
Well,
try to create something fresh. And I just think she should be applauded for it.
everybody is going to say, well, she got the money and the other stuff, but she was going to get the money in WWE. That's already been
Yep.
reported by other sources. I think the courage I appreciate of her, and I don't want to use it as a sports analogy, but if LeBron James said, you know, I'm going to leave the NBA, I can make 50 million in the NBA, but I'm going to leave and I'm going to go to China, or I'm going to go to Italy, or I'm going to go to Spain, and I'm going to prop up a minor, a number two, number three basketball promotion because I want the world to watch more basketball and I can be the catalyst. That's kind of the equivalent of what Mercedes has done because she left, she didn't go back to a company that is minting money right now. I mean, they're literally a money press. Every week you get the report, highest grossing revenue in this city,
Yep.
highest grossing SummerSlam. And she said, I'm going to go to AEW at its absolute coldest. I'm going to go where they are ice cold. They are not getting 800,000 viewers every week. They're not doing point fours in the demo. They're doing 0.23. But I'm going to go and I'm going to influence change. And that is the courage that I think she should get so much more credit for. But
Yep.
yet people are minimizing it, looking at it like, oh well, she's just it's a money grab. And then she did that one interview where they asked her, honestly, they said, do you think you'll ever go back to WWE? And she said, yeah, I think eventually I'll find my way back. And people are like, oh, okay, she's just here for the money. She's going to go back anyway. Well, you asked her an honest question. She gave you an honest answer. And
Yep.
then you get mad that the answer isn't the no, I'm here for life. Like you keep every
She's
door
32.
open. Yeah,
She's
you keep
32.
every
She
door
might go back
open.
when she's 43. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah, she
Trish
could go back. She
Stratus
could go back to
pops
the
in
Hall of
every once
Fame.
in a while.
She could go back after a 5 year AEW run just to go into the Hall of Fame and have that one last WrestleMania match. But the point is, it takes real courage to leave the biggest in the game by a long shot at the peak of its powers and walk away and say, I'm going to go do something different because I believe in women's wrestling this much and I believe in myself to be the catalyst. Like, I just think that she has to be given credit for that. And I think that people aren't going to give her the credit because they're just going to focus on the money and the ratings. And again, I don't want to make this about a Nielsen discussion, but television ratings across all formats of shows are down because of the
Yep.
way we consume media. And AEW is down in comparison to where it was year over year. There's no denying that. You can't lie about the numbers, but it takes time to build something back up. I mean, in 2020, would anybody think WWE would be this hot, given how cold a lot of people thought the product was? No, like
No, I mean
nobody thought
at that time the
this.
narrative
God, sorry, yeah,
yeah, that time the narrative was that they had hitched the to the wrong horse, right? No one believed
yeah,
you go
yeah.
2019, 2020, no one believed in Roman Reigns as the face of the company and now he's solidified business wise. I mean, easily on Mount Rushmore business wise.
He's over. He's gotten more over as a babyface since losing at Mania by not even appearing on TV.
Right.
You can make the case he's the most over babyface in wrestling, and he has not appeared on TV since main night two main event WrestleMania, losing to the guy that the company is saying is the next guy, is the face of the company in Cody Rhodes. And every week when I listen to this crowd, it's Roman, it's Roman. So it's like, oh my goodness, like they have made this guy into this. We have to be there seated when he comes back, but they're so hot as a
Yep.
company, WWE, that she could walk away. She could go back to WWE, get a very nice salary, have good matches, be mid to top of the card depending on what time frame we're talking, and just do that. But she took the courage route. I want to grow. I want to expand. She should be applauded for that. And more people in any industry should be applauded for taking risk. Risk is tough. Change is difficult. So I give her all the credit there. And I think she's made women's wrestling better by going to AEW. I think women's
100%.
wrestling is a better product today than it was in December of 2023 when we had some indecision on, okay, is AEW even pushing the women? Do they give them TV time?
They
What are they
were.
doing with the stories? What are we doing with this person? It's just they flip titles, they have belts.
And they've
You know,
created several great storylines over the last couple months, and I think WWE, whether it's a counter move, whether they're planning on doing it, who's to say, but I think especially over the last couple weeks and months, just some gigantic strides been made on TV time, storylines, the amount of storylines going, um, and you just named Marigold, two awesome matches in a new promotion. I think Mercedes is going to be out there on some strong shows, obviously over the next couple months. Um, so NJPW will be in the business there. Willow won the CMLL title last night, so you got a lot of great things going on. I think that might be uh, we didn't even touch on Tony and Mariah, which was as incredible of a closing angle shot, at least for uniqueness. I thought was really good. But we are running long, and I think it's just because there's so much to talk about and there's so much good content. And hopefully, anyone who'd still be listening enjoyed what we talked about. But we just enjoyed talking about women's wrestling. We've been doing this for half a decade. In a group chat, just talking about the business and just trying to see women's wrestling get to a better place because the women involved in the industry bust their ass. They bring a lot to the table. They bring a lot of value to the table, and they deserve to reap the rewards of that. So we're always going to be here to celebrate that.
yeah, last thing for anybody who listens to this is being recorded during a tennis. I mean, I'm a huge tennis fan, which is Novak and Alcaraz, the most expensive ticket price in the history of sports. And this match is a complete squash right now. It is 2 sets to love Alcaraz, and Novak might not win 3 games in this match. He's getting
Holy
wiped off the
crap.
court because he just came back from a knee injury. But the young guy is really, really good too. And he's going to be one of the best tennis players of all time if you know anything in his game. But yeah, I've never seen Novak get wiped off the court like this. He's lost 2 sets in an hour. And so 2 sets have already passed and we've recorded. Last year, they went 5 hours and the match went into the afternoon. And this match could be over by 11 o'clock your time. That's how quick this is going. Novak's
That's
just
crazy.
getting blown off the court. But hey,
Most
Alcaraz is
expensive ticket
amazing.
ever, too, not getting their money's worth, unfortunately.
Imagine that, right? You missed last year. You're like, oh, I got to go see the rematch. I'm going to pay 15,000 American dollars to see a blowout. It always happens that way. But no, this was fantastic. I think we got a lot off the table in what we're going to be doing in the coming weeks with some of the cool stuff we have planned. And the truth is, what we want to do with this forum, whether one person listens to it, a million people listen to it, is we want to bring positivity
Yep.
and enlightenment to women's wrestling because it is an undervalued piece
Yep.
of the wrestling business, whether it's pay, whether it's TV time, whether it's coverage, whether it's positive coverage, whether it's is incessantly pitting a fan base of a one woman against another. It's just a lot of not great content in terms of positivity. I know there's some really good podcasts, I'm sure, out there, but for us, I think we want to just be a light to shine on women's wrestling. And obviously, it starts from our common fandom of Mercedes, but we love the genre. And the genre has so many good things going on in it right now that it should be celebrated. So I wanted to say that.
Can't add anything better to that. It's a gigantic growth vehicle, and we just want to help it get there. So, uh, hey, if you made it this far, appreciate you listening, and hopefully we'll have some other episodes out in the future.
All right. Thank you guys.